Hey, what's going on everyone? This is my review of the RX-78 NT1 Gundam Alex in Master Grade form. I'll be reviewing this Master Grade Gundam in 4 categories: the build, the appearance, the articulation, and the gimmicks. I'll give each a score from 1 to 5, and at the end I'll tally everything up for an average score. Hopefully this review will help you decide if you should pick this kit up or wait for that 2.0 version to come out, sometime in the next decade hopefully. Anyway, part 1, the build. Well, first off, this kit came out in 1999, so needless to say, it's very dated. The engineering is incredibly bad. I mean, there's really no inner frame outside of the legs and the upper arms, so everything is based off polycaps. On top of that, there are bad nubs everywhere, and there are really obvious seam lines all over this kit. Really, pretty much any high grade made in the past 7 or 8 years has both more interesting and better implemented engineering. The manual doesn't help this build much either. It's in that old style of manual where just nothing makes sense. Having said that, there's only 2 screws for the shoulders and no real need for cement outside of attempting to fix the countless seam lines. Bandai also included these rubber pieces for the upper arms. They kind of cover up how bare the frame is on the arm, but they also kind of hamper movement. Now here comes the kit killer, as if everything I've just said wasn't already a kit killer. The detailing. There's a ton of mandatory painting you need to do to get this guy looking like he does on the box. Now let's just run through the list here. Starting at the feet, you need to put this gray into the ankle armor. Then you're more than likely going to want to put some black into the vents on the legs. But it can be really difficult to get looking good, so I just went with panel lines instead. Same goes for the vents on the back, which I actually painted. Don't forget about this thick black line on the side, and these vents on the front, and this small yellow circle on the side. Then you'll need to paint these red squares on the knees. You get stickers for them, but the stickers has to fold over like a 90-degree angle, so you're much better off just painting it. Then there are some thrusters on this middle piece on the waist. This part actually pretty much comes in all white, except for the black with the V-fin. So with the thrusters, you need to paint the black around the thruster, you need to paint the yellow on the inside of the thruster, and then you need to put a small little black dot inside. Then the side skirt armor once again comes in all white. Now moving on up to the chest, you'll need to add some black paint inside of the yellow vents. It's easier said than done to get those really hard edges, you know? The shoulders come in all white, so you'll need to add this black around the circular vents, yellow to the inside of the vents, and then finally another black dot to the very center of the vents. Don't forget you need to do the vents on the side of the armor too. Then on the forearm, you're going to want to add this black line underneath the blue machine guns. It really adds a lot of character to the machine guns. Now for the head, you have to add black paint to the vents on the side of the head. Lastly, on the backpack, you need to add yellow and black to these 2 vents on the back and on the side. These large 2 bottom vents actually come with yellow inserts though, which is nice. I just wish all the other vents on this kit came with these inserts too. If you've seen my Crossbone Gundam reviews, then you know too much mandatory detailing can be a major turnoff. But unlike the Crossbones, this kit has horrible engineering on top of it. I've got to give the build for this kit a very low score of 2 out of 5. Part 2, the appearance. The proportions on this kit are just flat out wonky, with everything being just a little too bulky. It's also topped off with the legs that are just too long and feet that are like clownishly big. The head is also really poor looking. The seam lines and nubs everywhere aren't making this guy look any better either. And of course the painting doesn't help. Because of the dated engineering, it's way more difficult than it should be to get all these vents looking half decent. Like painting the black around the shoulder thrusters, for example. The thrusters are built into the shoulder armor as a single white piece. Nowadays, these thrusters would be separate pieces, so they'd be much easier to paint around because you could just straight up remove them and then put them back on. But I digress. Back in the early days of the Master Grade line, Bandai had this trend of making Master Grades look more serious, and the colors of this kit reflect that. The blue and yellow are flat out too dark. But the weird thing is how bright and toyish the white is. The contrast just really isn't doing it for me. You get 2 sets of decals for this kit. The usual peel and stick caution signs, this time including these orange triangles. And you get a sheet of dry transfer names and model numbers. I really like this huge Alex decal you get for the shield. It's very early 90s in my opinion. Well, what more can I say about the appearance of this Master Grade Alex? I just don't like it at all. Having said that, this is recognizable as the Gundam Alex, and it's nowhere near as bad as a no-grade kit. So I'll give the appearance of this kit a middle score of 3 out of 5. It just barely hits acceptable for me. Part 3, the articulation. Okay, let's see if this holds up. Starting at the feet, you get a little backwards movement from the heel, but not too much. You get a very slight movement out of the ankle guards, but nothing crazy. The feet are on single ball joints. Yeah, you heard me, single ball joints. So don't expect any cool ground poses with this guy. You get a little more than a 90-degree bend for the knee. It feels really loose too, and if you bend it too much, the seam line on the upper thigh tends to separate. The hips are the old style ball and socket, so don't expect much out of them. The front skirts move about how you would expect. You get no movement from the chest itself, it's just a big brick. With the shoulders you get a full 360 spin and a little bit of a pop out. The shoulder armor is actually connected to the arms themselves and not the chest. It's really weird. You get about a 135-degree bend from the arms. It's not that bad actually. The wrists are on a ball and socket, and the hands have the usual trigger finger split style. You'll notice there are no pegs in these hands. The head is on a single ball and socket, so you don't get too much movement out of it. And that does it for the articulation. It's about average really, I mean, especially for its time period. You get some decent bends out of the elbow and the knee, but really not much else. I'll give the articulation of this kit an average score of 3 out of 5. It's nothing fantastic, but he can do 1 or 2 basic poses. Part 4, the gimmicks. This Gundam didn't have a lot of screen time in the anime, but Bandai still managed to include quite a few gimmicks with this Master Grade. As always, first up is the beam rifle. It's really bland. Like 2 big gray pieces sandwiched together bland. I tried to spice it up a little bit with some silver paint, but it still just looks really bad. Also, there are no pegs in the hands, so this rifle is way harder to get held upright than it should be. It's borderline impossible. I used the same trick I used with my RX-78-5 and used some wall hanging strips to sort of get the rifle stuck in there. Next up are the beam sabers. They fit pretty loosely in the backpack, and they tend to fall out really easily. These beam sabers are much easier to hold than the rifle, but they still fall out of his hands pretty frequently. Despite not appearing in the anime, this kit actually comes with a shield. It doesn't attach to the arm very well though, and the arm itself tends to be sort of loose, so the shield causes the arm to slump down all the time. I do think the shield looks cool though, especially with that big Alex decal. I really want to track down this font somewhere. I mean, it's just so cool. Lastly, you get the iconic machine guns in the arms. They pop out pretty well and they look pretty cool too. Whenever I pose this guy, I use the machine gun poses, mainly because they're the only weapons that work as they should. Remember to add this black line though, they can look kinda bland without it. Now for the transformation. You get the complete set of full armor pieces. They snap around the limbs pretty easily. The plastic is fairly thin though, so it's easy to snap off the connection pieces. I almost feel like this kit was made specifically for the full armor set. I mean, it covers up all the mandatory painting. If you don't like painting, this is definitely the way to go. It also doesn't hamper movement really. I recommend adding black paint to the crosses though. It really adds character to all the gray. Now, what to give the gimmicks of this kit? The Alex isn't known for its shield, its rifle, or even its beam sabers. It's known for its full armor and its machine guns, both of which work pretty well. So I'll give the gimmicks of this kit a slightly above average score of 3.5 out of 5. I mean, really, how often are you going to pose this guy with a gun or beam sabers? You're going for machine guns and full armor. Okay, time to wrap this up for an average score. The build was pretty bad, with a 2 out of 5. Aside from pretty bad engineering, there's a ton of mandatory painting, most of which is harder to paint than it should be because of poor part separation. The appearance was a slightly better 3 out of 5. This kit just doesn't look that great. It's recognizable as the Gundam Alex, but the proportions, colors, seam lines, and need for paint really hold this kit back from looking too good. The articulation was another 3 out of 5. It has some okay bends for its time period, but really you're only getting this guy in 1 or 2 poses. He doesn't have that much to offer. The gimmicks received a relatively high score of 3.5 out of 5. The lack of pegs make holding weapons near impossible, and the shield is just too heavy for the arm. But what really counts, the machine gun and the full armor, work okay. Plus I've really got to give this kit something, right? Tallying all that up and dividing, this Master Grade Gundam Alex receives a 2.875, but I'd round that up to a 2.9. In terms of a percentage, it receives a 57.5%. Don't get me wrong here, the Gundam Alex is one of my favorite Gundams, so I really wanted to give this kit the benefit of the doubt, but I just can't. This kit straight up sucks. The Alex needs a 2.0 or a version Katoki or something. Well, that's a bit of a somber note to end on, but hey, not every Master Grade is good. Feel free to leave a comment or question about this kit, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. Thanks for watching.